Yo, dudes, this is Tony Hudson, Denise in Just One of the Guys, and Sarah in Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. And you're listening to Tommy Throwback Kovac on Splat from the Past. I'd rather go to the phone book and pick a name at random.
Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I will be welcoming my 8th guest from Just One of the Guys, John Apicella, who played Coach Morrison, the bowling-obsessed gym teacher in that classic. And he's also been in a lot of other great things. He guest starred on Hill Street Blues. He did the Police Story revival TV movies. Guest starred on some horror and sci-fi stuff like Alien Nation, Quantum Leap, Twin Peaks, etc. And it's going to be great to have him on the show today. I love talking to the journeyman character actor. They got such great, inspiring stories. So, here is my interview with John Apicella. Hey, John.
Hey, how are you doing, Tom?
I'm great. How are you today, sir?
Okay.
Weather's good over there?
It's very nice down here. We've been a nice sunny day, not horrendously hot, but bright and clear skies. How's it up? You're in Northern California somewhere?
Yeah, Redding, California. It's a little windy right now, but it's pretty hot outside, too, overall.
Great.
But this is such a great honor. Thank you for taking the time today.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have just such an incredibly full coronavirus isolation schedule. I was forcing myself to sleep till 10 o'clock, and then it took me an hour to read the newspaper and have some toast. So my day has been really full so far.
You're one of the few people...
there are busy days sometimes, but mostly it's finding stuff to do. And it's interesting that, as you go through life, you always have some box full of stuff. You're like, oh, I'll take care of this someday. I'll go through this stuff someday.
Yeah.
And so I'm realizing, this is that time. This is when I get to go through everything and clear stuff up and throw things away and digitize things. And,
Yeah. You're one of the few people I've met that still read the newspaper, by the way.
Yeah. Well, we want to keep in touch with the outside world so that it doesn't seem so obvious that we're not interacting with it personally.
Yeah.
Physically.
That's true, yeah. So, going back in time, did you gravitate toward acting early on in your childhood?
Yeah, I did, as a matter of fact. I was one of those kids that would sing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm, I think probably a familiar story to a lot of people. You just sing your heart out when it's just you and your family, and then when they have guests over, they pull you out into the living room. They sing that song you've been singing. Yeah. And then you go, on the bill, totally frightened. And that's kind of been, I guess it's kind of been the dynamic ever since then. Mixing bold extroversion with a secret horror of doing things in front of other people.
Yeah. Did you do a lot of school plays and community theater?
I didn't until later in high school. Really was my senior year in high school before I got into theater seriously. Before that, I would be like a neighborhood impresario. We lived in a suburb, with, what do they call them, snout-style houses, with a big garage door facing the street. And I would use the garage door as our grand curtain and run clotheslines and pin up my mom's sheets to make inner curtains. And we would act out Mad Magazine articles and other horrible jokes that, we knew on our own. And we had a series of these until finally I think the rest of the kids in the neighborhood decided they wanted to retire from show business. So I did one-man show, and then I think I retired it for a while. And then in high school, I actually tried to get into a couple of plays when I was going to Brophy Prep in Phoenix, which is an all-boys Jesuit-run Catholic school. Mm-hmm. But they have a grade requirement. You have to have at least a 4.0, a steady, solid 4.0 to participate in the plays, and I wasn't doing that. So I didn't get the chance till I transferred to a public school, where I immediately got cast as Captain Corcoran in HMS Pinafore. And then later that year as oh dear, I've forgotten his name, but the lead in Arsenic and Old Lace. So I got both a musical and a straight comedy in 1 year. And by the end of that year, I was sure I was destined for Broadway, and it was only a matter of time. I was so full of myself. As I remember going to see a play at another school after I graduated high school. I went to see a play at one of our sister high schools, mm-hmm. And it was the same play we did, and I was just so critical of everybody else because I was such an authority. I'd done 2 plays, so I felt I was like, it's me and Flo Ziegfeld. We can, and it wasn't until another couple of years later I realized what an idiot I was about that, and how everybody has a talent. Every individual person that picks up a role has their own view of it, and because it's not mine doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah.
And so after that, I felt much better about other people and myself, and I began to really enjoy the communal aspects of theater, the ensemble aspects of theater, and I realized that the real joy of it wasn't just me doing my part; it was me being part of a community, of a fellowship that was creating something bigger than ourselves, and that's sort of how I've. It's basically been my way of operating ever since I was about 17, mm-hmm. 18 maybe. Yeah.
Did you eventually get to New York?
Not to crack into the acting field. I've been there on other business, and I have worked. The closest I got was a summer on Martha's Vineyard. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like a little summer stock. But I spent enough time visiting in New York that I realized it was my feeling was, well, this is exciting. I get all that, but this is like a real expensive, hard place to live. Mm-hmm. And the only reason you're there is for Broadway. And I realized I didn't care that much for Broadway. There's a kind of style, this Broadway style, this Broadway pizzazz, and I realized I hate pizzazz. I don't like pizzazz at all. And I just didn't like the theater. I didn't like the fact that it was so horrendously expensive, the fact that it was really tourist-driven and more like Universal Studios or Disneyland than any theater I'd been in. And so I realized, hey, I can make a living in Los Angeles as an actor and still do as much theater as I care to, for the most part. So I didn't really see a lot of reason to go to New York. And I've always thought, if I get offered a job, I'll probably take it. And I've been on the verge of that 2 or 3 times. I've been in I almost got New York jobs, but it hasn't happened yet. Mm-hmm. But, it's still could, I suppose.
Yeah.
But no, that hasn't been I've never really had that urge to feel like I had to prove myself in New York City to feel like I was an American actor. I think there's great theater done all over this country, and it's a shame that it's not accepted more widely. But that's the fact.
Mm-hmm. So then, you headed to L.A.?
Well, I've been in L.A. since 1977.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up, I was born in Chicago. My family moved to Arizona when I was about 6. And I grew up in Phoenix and left there to go work at a radio station at Lake Tahoe, sort of at the end of the progressive radio era. Mm-hmm. Of the 60s and early to mid-70s. And when that radio station closed, mainly because there was a drought in Northern California in 1976, mm-hmm. that dropped Lake Tahoe's level about 5 feet, dried up the Truckee River, and just ended the tourist trade, which means there was no advertising money. Nobody was advertising, so our radio station went out of business. So I came down to Los Angeles because I was offered a job here. A friend of mine at the station was working down here at a place called Public Advertising Council, mm-hmm. which is sort of the West Coast version of the Ad Council on Madison Avenue in New York. Mm-hmm. Basically doing more liberal and left-wing public service announcements, like the anti-handgun, Braille books for the blind, accessibility through the Architectural and Transportation Barriers Compliance Board, which was a radical idea back in the 70s that you should put a ramp up into your building so people with wheelchairs can access it. Mm-hmm. Or just put Braille numbers next to the buttons on the elevators. Things like that were considered kind of radical, weird ideas back then. But unfortunately, that's all part of our society now. But anyway, I got a job here, first working for the Zero Population Growth organization. As an intern for a few months, and then I got a job at the Public Advertising Council as their artistic creative director. And worked there for about 5 years, doing lots of interesting projects and traveling a bit, and going to Washington with some regularity, and walking around the halls of the HUD and the education department and things like that. And it was really interesting and eye-opening kind of adventure. And that was as I was doing that the first 2 years in LA, our offices had moved right across the street from the Odyssey Theater Ensemble, which is a company that's been doing theater here in LA for a good 45 years now, mm-hmm. Maybe closing in on 50. And I saw they had an audition announcement up. I thought, well, it'd be fun to get into a play again. I haven't done a play in a while. Yeah. I went and auditioned for it, and I got a part as Rollo, the roller skating floor judge, in a play called Marathon 33, about dance marathons back in the Depression. And that was just a great fun. A huge show with maybe 25, 30 people, as many as 30 people in it, including the orchestra. And very complicated, demanding. I didn't roller skate, actually. I had to learn to roller skate. I went from not being a roller skater to being able to roller skate afterwards over cigarette butts and that other crap on the stage. And I made a lot of friends in that. It's sort of my introduction to LA, the LA theater and actor community through that show. A lot of my relationships go all the way back to that show and people I met in those very early days.
Mm-hmm. Was that the same theater company that Ari Gross and Robert Fieldsteel was in with you?
The theater company, I don't think if we were all three of us in company together. I don't remember if Robert was as an actor in the first company I belonged to, but But Ari is a member of the Antiques company, which is the company I've been currently involved in, and I was a founding member and one of the artistic directors for a number of years in the earlier days, and continue to be an ensemble member of the Antiques company, and we're classical repertory ensemble based here in Los Angeles, and offices in Glendale.
Yeah, you're my 8th guest from Just One of the Guys. Was that a standard audition for you?
A standard audition, you mean to get into the company?
To get to be cast as the coach in that movie.
Oh, imagine that. I was actually just offered that part because the director, Lisa Gottlieb, and I were both, and Ari and Robert and I. Oh, that's right. That's what we were all members of. A group called First Stage.
Yes.
It wasn't an actors company. It was really a playwright group. We would meet every night and read a new play, or sometimes a screenplay, but more often a stage play by one of our members or by someone else. It wasn't necessarily a member's. The group was there to do a good, well-rehearsed reading of a new piece, and then to discuss it afterwards with a skilled dramaturg who could lead the discussion without it getting too much into, oh, you should do this, you should do that, you should rewrite this, need to say this, and you really need to say that at some point. To really put our attention more on what the writer wants to say and how he or she can say it more cleanly and clearly, and get closer to their own vision rather than trying to coax them into a vision that the other participants might think has a better potential for success or production or being sold. So Robert was a member as both a playwright and an actor. Ari was an actor member. I was an actor member. And I believe we did a couple readings of the screenplay for Just One of the Guys. And Lisa had directed us in all of us. We'd done a bunch of things together, so she knew us very well. We knew her. And when she made that film, it was her first movie, she was already settled on a cast in her mind. She knew who she wanted to play the roles. So she just told, I think it was Annette Benson was the casting director. Yeah. She told Annette, this is who I want for these roles. You don't have to get anybody else. And there was she had to fight for it a little bit. I don't think they just, let her do it. She had to dig her heels in. And I think there's probably a lot of drama in there that she didn't share with us at the time, that she had to go through to do it. But she got about 5 or 6 of us who were part of the very first readings of the screenplay in the final film. So it was my first SAG job. I had done a few after jobs, a few television sitcoms before that, but this was my first Screen Actors Guild job and got me my SAG card and really got me started in my career.
Yeah, you're just so great as that gym teacher obsessed with bowling. Did Lisa allow you to improvise much?
No, we pretty much stuck to the script as far as the dialogue was concerned. came up with other stuff. I mean, look, there's a moment when they have this little tiny like version of a bowler on the set.
Yeah.
And I asked the prop guy, I said, can I scrape the hair off the top of this?
Yeah.
Of this little guy? And he said, yeah, sure, go ahead. So I scraped the hair. We made a little moment in the movie of him, you know, polishing the head of this little bowler.
Yeah.
And I think there are a couple of things, you know, just in developing the costume and his constant use of a hand stabilizer for his grip.
Yeah.
Whether he was handling a bowling ball or not, stuff like that. I guess I was allowed to or encouraged to develop, but we didn't really do a lot of verbal improvisation. But when we're doing the physical work or setting things up, you know, we usually kind of do it on our own first. I think. And then she would say, okay, instead of that, why don't you move over here? Or and what you did there, that's just right, so keep that and do this. And, you know, that's how we do the blocking.
Yeah.
It's not, you know, compared to a lot of contemporary comedies where they'll, you know, once they get the taste, they'll do a bunch of improvisation or throw out the director or the writers will throw out lines to the actors to try right at the moment. It wasn't that kind of, it wasn't really that style. It was a fairly low-budget film, so we needed to get the shots and move on.
Yeah. This movie was a huge staple of my house growing up, but to this day we still quote all the lines and we just love it.
Right.
My dad's...
Well, it was like on the Comedy Channel and Comedy Central and
HBO,
MTV,
yeah.
HBO. Forever. It was just amazing how long they kept running it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's interesting to see how people did, you know, responded to it, and how many people your age I run into who they like, oh, that movie, I saw that movie 80 times when I was 6 or 8.
Yeah. To this day, I mean, my dad still quotes, you know, what you're saying, you know, after the fire, you know, we have a saboteur, a Nimrod, a Zero. He loves that.
I'm so happy to hear that.
A human gutter ball, you know.
I'm glad somebody remembers my line in retrospect.
Yeah. And Joyce is great. I've had her on 3 times. I actually went to a screening she did up in San Francisco about 7 months ago, just before the pandemic started. And it wasn't a huge group of people there for the screening, but everyone there was loyal and just absolutely went gaga for the movie. And it was really interesting to hear it from the perspective, especially from a couple of members of the gay community there. They loved the movie a lot.
Yeah, that's great. That's heartening to hear. Yeah, you know, we had a reunion screening. I guess it was a 30th reunion screening at a little theater called the Silent Movie Theater. It's about a 250, maybe 300 seat tops theater on Fairfax Boulevard here in Hollywood, and it was pretty much packed for this screening because a lot of the actors were there. Pretty much the whole principal cast, I think, showed up, and it was really a great evening. And it was just such a thrill to hear how much people enjoyed the movie and how much they loved being in a room watching it together. It was a really enjoyable night. We had a good time.
Yeah, I saw the panel on YouTube. You guys all looked like you were having a great time.
Yeah, well, you know what? Hey, we got like really comfortable sofa seats in the front row, all the popcorn we could eat.
Yeah.
Bottomless Pepsis. You know, who can ask for anything more?
Nothing. That's heaven right there.
It was great, and it was great. And we hadn't seen each other. Some of us, like Ari and I, are buddies, and we see each other with some frequency. and Robert as well before he moved out to Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
But some of the others I haven't seen since the cast party. I think I've seen two or three people over the years. But it was really nice to catch up with some of the folks and see all the kids who nobody was teenage, but everybody who played the teenagers now all middle aged and everything, and it was bittersweet in the way all reunions are. But I had a great time. I think everybody else did too. It was really a reminder of we spent such compressed time together shooting this thing in Scottsdale, all living together in the DoubleTree Inn.
Mm-hmm.
Each had our own room, but we're all on the same campus and hanging out together and going to a movie or going bowling or going out to eat with each other. Just it was like being off. Working on location is like summer camp or something, except the food tends to be better.
Yeah.
And you don't have to sing Kumbaya if you don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a funny thing about that's one of the things. It's true of film. It's true of theater. Even television. If you're not just doing 8 years of the same series, where you get together with a bunch of actors and you build a relationship and you build a family, you build a community, and then the last performance comes and the last shot is in the can, and suddenly it's all over, and you hug and say goodbye, and you move off in your different directions, and maybe you don't see each other again. And yet when you do see each other, if it does happen, you bump into somebody or there's some reason, a good excuse to have some kind of reunion, it's a wonderful thing because you realize how close you've become and how effortless it is to kind of feel that again, to feel that closeness.
Yeah.
That's one thing actors do that is kind of amazing, is the way we create these tight little communities, and then they go away, and then you just do it over and over again. You build these relationships and friendships that are very intimate and personal, and then suddenly they're not there anymore because you're on to the next thing. It's the mechanism of the business. That's how it works.
Yeah. Did you participate in the Blu-ray that just came out?
Yes, I did. I did. I didn't have a lot to say, but it was nice to be there to see the film again, to see the folks who were involved. It was an enjoyable evening or afternoon. Daytime? What was it? We were in a darkened room. I forget, but it was a fun experience, and I'm really happy that they're re-releasing it on Blu-ray. So many films from that era have just disappeared and are impossible to find. And it's very pleasant that whoever decided to make a Blu-ray of it did that. I hope they have great success with it. I hope the guys of your generation who grew up with the movie buy their Blu-ray copy so that they can see the important scenes in all sufficient detail.
Yeah, I'm going to buy a copy eventually. But yeah, I mean, I've talked to Joyce, Tony, Deborah, Robert, Ari, Lisa, you, and Stu Charno, which I regret. Stu, I don't know if you've seen him in the last 35 years, but he's messed up. He's got multiple sclerosis, and he's just very bitter and unhappy. Sadly to say.
Dear.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's really, really sad. It was probably the saddest and most awkward interview I did. It was really, really sad. But
well, let's hope you caught him on a bad day. I hope he's not having. I hope he finds some joy.
Well, I know a couple of colleagues of mine who have tried to get him for interviews, and he was rude to them. So I don't think I don't think that was a bad day. I think he's just like that all the time now.
Yeah.
Sad. He's so talented. He was so great in that role too, you know?
Yeah, he was. He was. And he really loved those animals too, the animal bugs and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, every day he'd have a different one. You know, every shot there'd be a different animal, right?
Yeah.
And he would spend hours with that, you know, with whatever it was, you know, a spider or a cricket or a salamander. He would just like, you know, that was his. He was just like me, holed up with them in one corner of the set, talking to them.
Yeah.
So he took it. It was nice to see how, you know, that he took it seriously, and that was one of the enjoyable things on it. You know, some jobs you get on, people feel like it's just a job, and they just do whatever they need to do the job, but they don't necessarily do anything extra. But there was a really nice gung ho feeling on this show. People really wanted it, you know, to be as good as it could be, and you know, they brought everything they could to it. People were very supportive of each other. It was a good atmosphere, and you know, Lisa is a very good leader in keeping things light and happy and positive and funny. And so, you know, it's not every project that has that combination of professionalism and enthusiasm and fun. So, you know, I remember the film fondly, I think, even if it didn't have this great ongoing life that it has turned out to have.
Yeah, it's a hilarious movie, great script, great everything. It was one of those things that, you know, sadly it didn't do well at the box office, you know, but it was one of those things that just came together nicely, you know.
Yeah, it did, and it's not bad company to be in, you know. Movies like The Wizard of Oz or Wonderful Life, which bombed at the box office pretty. Wizard of Oz didn't do terribly, but it didn't break any box office records.
No.
And I believe It's a Wonderful Life tanked, and yet they both went on to become, you know, top 10 movies on so many people's lists, as well as enormous audience favorites. So, box office, thankfully, isn't always the measure of the success of a film. Although it's real easy for a bad movie to, you know, knock a director off their stride, and at least he was fortunate enough to, you know, get to do at least another couple of films, and remain a director, and you know, so I'm happy for that. I'm sorry she didn't direct a lot more, but she I think turned her attention to education, and has had a wonderful career as a professor for the last almost 25 years, I guess.
Yeah,
so,
she's a great lady.
Yeah, she really is.
Do you remember? Do you remember guest starring on Hill Street Blues?
Hill Street. Right, I do remember that. Yes.
Yeah, I heard everyone on that show was at each other's throat every day, and there was a lot of egos clashing. Is there some truth to that?
Well, as I recall, the scene I was in was, I think I played like a morgue attendant.
Mm-hmm.
Which is always Hill Street Blues or NYPD Blues. Hill Street Blues. Yeah, Hill Street Blues, I played a morgue attendant, so it was just me, a kid that we were trying to kind of scare straight by showing him, you know, different people that had died of drug overdoses or whatever. And I'm trying to remember who the guy was. It wasn't Joe Spano, I don't think. I know Joe, and I don't recall doing the scene with him. But it was one of the other younger cops on the show. And I'm afraid my memory is failing me. I don't remember who. So that was the only regular I encountered on that show. And he was fine. He was great. The kid was great. It was, you know, it was a enjoyable scene, but I didn't really get any sense of the actual life on Hill Street Blues. It was such a big ensemble full of people, all kind of good at playing edgy, cantankerous people.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that makes sense, that it would be kind of an edgy, cantankerous set, that people would, be clashing a bit. That's not always a bad thing. Sometimes that, actually can feed into the energy of the show in a way that works, depending on what the subject matter of the show is. And in a workplace where death and danger are always in the air, that may have helped create the atmosphere that made the show so successful. It's hard to say. I have to say, mostly in my experience, actors who get to that place where they're, a series regular on a successful show, are usually very grateful for it. Most people get there after a few years of toil and disappointment, and so when it happens, they realize, there's an element of good fortune and luck, and whatever the energies of the universe are that conspired together to get you there, you need to be grateful to them. So usually the gratitude and openness and friendliness is the prime thing I see on a successful show. Every once in a while you run into one where, because of the star or because of the showrunner or because of one or two of the supporting continuing cast, it's uncomfortable. That there's a tension on the set that is kind of palpable, and it just, there's no sense of fun going on. It's a rare thing, though. You don't really run into it very often. I think I can count on one hand the number of actors I've met or worked with that were unpleasant or antagonistic or even distant and cold.
Yeah.
Usually, the regulars on a cast are very supportive and welcoming. They want the guest stars and the day players to do well because that makes the show good. So they want them to feel at home. They want them to feel welcome. They want, they'll say, hey, you want to run through the line? You want to run lines a few times? They're usually, professional and affable and supportive and friendly. In my experience, that's more the norm than a set that's full of jealousies and disdain and hatred. I just don't run into it very often.
That's good.
I know I did work on. I did 2 or 3 episodes of Hill Street of
Police Story
of NYPD Blue.
Yeah.
And I came in that actually just at the beginning of was it the second season or the third season? It's whenever, what's his name? The redheaded,
David Caruso.
David Caruso. So Caruso had just left.
Mm-hmm.
And there was like a memo on the bulletin board from Stephen Bochco saying, well, as we embark on the first season without the little lieutenant, we look forward to having a good time. We welcome Jimmy, who is one of the great leading men in television these days. So we feel like we're in good shape, and we wish the little lieutenant well in all of his endeavors. And from there, that was a really enjoyable set to work on, and they weren't really warm. I mean, I can't say. I'm so sorry. My brain is so uncooperative. It comes to names. David, who played Syphilis?
On NYPD Blue?
On NYPD Blue. Brilliant actor who played Sipowicz. Anyway, he wasn't warm or friendly, but he wasn't unkind. He just was a very serious, brooding guy when he's working on that role. Mm-hmm. You know, he's like...
Oh, Dennis Franz.
What he's doing.
Dennis Franz.
Right? Dennis Franz, of course.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry to not remember Dennis Franz's name. He's a brilliant actor, and you know, certainly that he almost single-handedly, as good as everybody else was on that show, he kind of single-handedly brought it up a whole, you know, rank, just on the power of his own commitment. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, like I would have loved to have had lunch with him or a conversation, but you know, he had other things to do, and I was completely respectful of that, and I didn't take it like, oh, what a stuck up guy. Why can't he have the same conversation with me he's had with 1,000 other day players? You know, it didn't bother me at all. And Jimmy Smith was really warm and friendly. Everybody else on the show was great. Bill Brockstrup was wonderful. I got to know Bill on that show, and over the years we've both been a part of the Antius Company as well, and he is one of our artistic directors now, and I'm glad to say I'm one of the people that, you know, encouraged him to join the company, and certainly has been to our benefit.
I've seen the Police Story movies you did, including one of them has Clayton Rohner from Just One of the Guys.
Yeah, I don't think Clayton and I had a scene together in that. We were on the same show. That happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And usually, you know, of course, the way films work, the way shows are shot, if you don't have a scene, if you're not in the same scene with somebody, you most likely won't see them at all. You won't be there the same days.
Yeah, and Ed O'Neill is in that, and you did an episode of Married with Children with him.
Mm-hmm.
With Ed O'Neill.
Oh, Ed, yeah. Yes. Also, Ed's wife was a member of First Stage.
Oh.
So he would come every once in a while to see First Stage shows. He may have even, I think there's a possibility he was in the audience for one of the readings of Just One of the Guys. That would be interesting to know. But
yeah.
there's no way, without a time machine or asking Ed, we would know. I did that episode of Police Story with him, and I guess it's just that we've run into each other a couple of times too since then.
Yeah, he's a hilarious guy. I love it. Anytime I see him in anything, he's great and funny.
Did you ever see John from Cincinnati?
I remember when it was advertised when it was on, but it got canceled before I could see an episode.
Yeah. Well, they did one season, and to tell the truth, the one season hangs together just fine as a limited series. Mm-hmm. And it's a really, I loved it. I thought it was a really interesting show, and he was incredibly moving on it. He was really wonderful. As a man who basically had dedicated his life to taking care of his wife. Mm-hmm. That died, I believe, as the series begins. And he's trying to find a reason to live. And it's just a wonderful performance, beautifully written, and he did it really well. Really strange series, but one I enjoyed very much. I thought it was great. Although I don't know if I'll ever forgive HBO and Milch for leaving Deadwood hanging for 10 years.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God. I remember Ed O'Neill saying in an interview that he was supposed to play the lead that Ian McShane plays in Deadwood, and they did not want him because he was Al Bundy, you know? So he did John from Cincinnati as a way of making up for that. You know, Milch put him in that show, you know? But, you know, after John from Cincinnati was canceled, they were like, see, our demographic doesn't want to see Al Bundy. You know? It's just, that's how show business is sometimes.
I guess. And I guess you could say say I don't. I'm not like a regular viewer of Modern Family, but that is kind of it's kind of the less of a loser version of Al Bundy.
Yeah. He is, yeah, exactly. Yeah. He did it for another 10 or 11 years or so, like he did with that show.
Right.
It's amazing.
Anyway, I'm sure I'm like anybody else. I tell any actor, doesn't matter who you are. Once you get a job, you've got stuff to complain about.
Yeah.
But I'm sure the bottom line is he's probably very, very grateful for years of work on Modern Family, and I think Ed has managed to accept his success without too much ill feeling towards those that kept him from being able to show the full range of his abilities. That's how you have to realize that's what television is. Movies too, to an extent, but television especially. If you have great success in a particular role on television, that's how the mass audience is going to see you. Unless every once in a while somebody has a brilliant ability to break through and become something else, and to be reevaluated by the mass audience and accepted in a completely different kind of role. Mm-hmm. It's really the exception to the rule. Usually, if you do something you have great success with, you have to realize that your great success is going to be tempered with the fact that you're not going to have the freedom as an actor to do the kinds of roles you're capable of doing. You're going to be consigned to this narrow range of that one particular character. Mm-hmm. It's frustrating, but that's one of the things that one of the saving graces of the business is that you have theater. Mm-hmm. You can do things on stage that you couldn't do on television.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. You even got to be in a movie with Jack Lemmon called Dad.
Right.
Yeah.
That was a lovely experience. Working with somebody like Jack Lemmon is that's like being in a makeup trailer with Mount Rushmore. It's so exciting to be like, and I did get to talk to him a little. Mm-hmm. Although because he was playing an older man.
Yeah.
From the time he would get there and get there in the morning and sit in the makeup chair to have them, they start putting Dad on pretty early. His call was like 6. I think mine was 7:30. So he was already in the chair an hour and a half by the time I got there. So he was Dad already. He would get into character, and he'd do the character voice that he was doing, and he'd kind of stay in character, but he'd still be Jack Lemmon. Mm-hmm. So you could talk to him as Jack Lemmon, but he'd be answering you as Dad. It was kind of funny, but I was really interested because he had done a lot of early television.
Oh, yeah.
And I just wanted to ask him about that. What was it like doing doing dramas live on the air, and what was what was it like? And why do you think we don't do it anymore? And anyway, we had a nice conversation about that. But it was very strange because instead of hearing Jack Lemmon talking back, I'd be hearing Dad talk back to me.
Yeah. That line that he has.
I was just a kid. I'm a young guy. I'd take any job. I'd take any job at all. I didn't know what I was doing. It was also lovely to see, there's this, and I don't know that it's something that everybody, that's like general knowledge over something actors with actor knowledge, but he has this little ritual that he does before every scene, just as they're locking down the set and just before the director says action, he says quietly to himself, "Magic time."
Oh, yeah. I always heard that story about him. He would always say it's magic time before a take.
Right. And I found out that that is true somewhat. He doesn't do it before each take, but he does it before the first take in each scene.
Yes.
And it's just a little personal ritual. He obviously wasn't doing it for anyone else. but himself. He and I are like waiting up in the hallway to make an entrance together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he just does it, and we do the setup, and after we start the setup, we get the setup, he just quietly said to himself, "Magic time." and it's kind of a thrill. It's kind of a thrill to hear that, you know, to be there and to realize, okay, I'm part of this magic with Jack Lemmon. It's just really delightful to what a great opportunity, and what a I wouldn't say an honor, because they're not honoring me. I'm just lucky, you know. I'm fortunate that I got that job on that day and got to have that experience, and to spend a day with someone that was so influential.
Yeah.
In my life, you know, he's one of my heroes. I love his energy and his style and his fearlessness in everything he did. You look at the list of Jack Lemmon's work and see all the great pictures he was in. You know, you say, well, yeah, he's a lucky guy, but you don't get to be in this many great pictures by just being a lucky guy. You've got to be bringing some greatness to the game.
Oh, of course.
A lot of them are great because of him. So that was lovely. And Ted Danson was a lovely fellow too. And it was really just the three of us for pretty much that whole day. So again, that's that funny thing. By the end of a 12-hour day, you feel like you've known each other since high school.
Yeah. That line that he has, dying isn't a sin, not living is. That's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true.
Yeah.
You did a lot of horror. You did a lot of later on a little bit of horror and sci-fi stuff. You guest starred on Alien Nation, Quantum Leap, Twin Peaks. Are you a horror sci-fi fan?
Not so much horror, but sci-fi and fantasy. Yes, sci-fi especially. My favorite stuff growing up was Robert Heinlein's novels. You know, I started with his youth novels and went through his adolescent novels and then his adult novels. And I actually got to know his widow a bit back in the days of when I set up with the Public Advertising Council. One of our clients was the L5 Society,
right,
which is a group of science enthusiasts who are interested in doing planning and encouraging the eventual development of space-based settlements.
Right.
In the Langrian points between the Earth and the Moon. There are certain points between any two interacting heavenly bodies that are sort of stable orbit points.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the most obvious being a place about 3/4 of the way to the Moon, between the Moon and the Earth, or maybe a little further, where the gravitational pull of the Moon and the Earth are equalized. And you can just literally, you go into orbit around that point. You go into a small orbit around that point.
Right.
And you put something there, it'll stay there forever. It won't fall back down to one of those. You don't need any power to keep it there. It becomes part of the system in a stable way. So those are the best places to build space, habitable space structures. Where, you know, people, mostly the idea, I think, being if manufacturing things under microgravity has an advantage, you know, that's what the local industry essentially could be. Or if we learn we can grow things in the microgravity in a way they don't grow on Earth. So anyway, that was the idea of I was assigned that group and sort of became their media mentor as we did some work towards defeating a moon treaty that some of the members were trying to push through the United Nations. And the moon treaty basically said that for all time you could only go into space in a licensed and it was like beyond say having to get a driver's license or registration for your car, although that's how they sold it. It was really a means of keeping individuals from being able to travel in space unless they were chartered by a government.
Mm-hmm.
So we lobbied against that and wrote some ads and did some print ads, trying to convince people that wasn't the way to go. And I think we were successful in keeping that particular codicil out of the treaty. Although I have to say I don't know where that's at these days. It was 30 years ago we were fighting that battle, so who knows where it's gone since then.
Mm-hmm. When you guest starred on Twin Peaks, did you understand the show at all?
It was the second season.
Mm-hmm.
So I had already seen, the first season. So as far as understanding the show, I don't know if that's quite the way to put it, but I was certainly invested in it. I was I'm a big fan of the show. As a matter of fact, I think the third season, the revival that was done on Showtime the year before last, is one of the great accomplishments of television. Especially that the sixth episode, which explains the source of the evil that has begun to overrun the Earth, coming out of the atomic blast at Trinity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew what I was a part of. As far as the story goes, the understanding anything beyond my own moment, I don't believe anyone on that show, except perhaps Kyle MacLachlan, was ever given a whole script.
Uh-huh.
You would only get your sign. And so, I had no idea what else was going on. I didn't know, James's backstory. I didn't know if he was really guilty as charged or if he was an innocent soul. I didn't know how badly my character was treating his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Until we got in the studio to do the voiceover with the soundtrack of a screaming battle going on in the house that James could hear from a distance.
Mm-hmm.
So all I was told, I had looked at 3 different directors. I think because I was on the screen for 2 of the episodes, and then just audio on the 3rd episode. But all I was basically told was, he likes cars. That's all we really, just make sure you really like cars. And be a friendly guy. Be a nice, friendly guy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's all they wanted. And, and that's all I needed to know, really. Those are the given circumstances of my scene. So I was able to work with that. Anyway, it was like most other sets. It was friendly. It was professional. It was, it's kind of a high-pressure environment to work in. You're working on a show that is that popular and that in the media's eyes, the showbiz industry media eyes.
Right.
So everybody put on a lot on the line, and there was that tension of wanting to excel and do the best you could. But it was a good group of people. I can't recall offhand the name of the lovely actress who played my wife, but she was really a sweetheart, very charming. We had a lovely time together. So, frankly, hey, it's the second season of
Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks, which all of us who are fans a certain extent. The network was fooling around with things. They were really dumbing it down to a certain extent. It was getting much soapier.
Yeah.
In the sense of soap, like a soap opera. And that whole subplot of, James and the evil wife and the boyfriend, it had nothing. It was just like such a cliched situation. It was so unlike the more inventive and bizarre stuff that was so wonderful about the first season. And while it's, the second season's not awful, I watched it again. My wife and I watched all the original Twin Peaks stuff, the 2 seasons of the show and the movie, before the revival aired on Showtime. And in retrospect, it's not as horrible as I remembered. There's a lot of fun, there's a lot of good stuff in the second season, but it's not on the same level as the first.
Yeah, and it was Annette McCarthy who played your wife.
Annette McCarthy, yes, great person. I loved her very much. And I didn't get to meet David on Twin Peaks, as I recall. Mm-hmm. But I did get to meet him. I also did a role in Lost Highway, playing a chaplain in a prison execution sequence that got cut.
Oh.
And the audition was great. The audition was at Joanna Ray's bungalow. She had a bungalow, I think, on the Warner lot at that time. So it was this bright little bungalow, and she brought me up to the second floor, and we went into this little cozy room, and there's David and this little tiny dog. And he just, she introduced me to him, and he sat down, and we just talked about this and that for a while.
Yeah.
And then the dog came up and sniffed my ankle and then hopped up on my lap. So I just, scratched the dog behind the ears and petted it for a while until the dog, went on to something else. And I think actually that's what got me the part. This was a dog like me. David, he just said, yes, I came with the sides ready to, to do whatever he wanted. And he said, well, I don't really want to, what's in the side, this is placekeeping. I want it to be a Catholic priest, so on the day, could you just come in with whatever, do some research and come in with a couple of choices of what a Catholic priest might be praying in this situation?
Yeah.
And I said, okay, yeah, that's no problem. I can do that. He said, well, yeah, great. Gee, great to meet you. It's going to be fun. And I went out with Joanna. I said, well, what happened? Did I just get the job? And she said, yeah, looks like. So that's how he cast. He didn't want me to read anything. He just wanted to take a look at me, have the dog check me out, and I passed.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
How about?
It was great. And then on the day where it was shot, they had built an execution chamber with a witness box and glass, an electric chair, on the second floor of the old 5th Street fire station down on Skid Row in L.A. And I remember getting there we kind of did a walkthrough, and he figured out where he wanted people to be. And then he said, okay, guys, this is no way. We're going to get this room looking the way we want it to look. And he spent the next 3 hours with one of his assistants. He sent an assistant out to go to a supermarket and get all the spray waxes that they had. And he just went around with a little wax buffer, and he'd tell the guy, okay, he'd squirt, and he'd say, okay, buff that out. And he'd look, and he'd squirt. And he just worked on the floor and the walls until he got just the kind of reflection that he wanted. Mm-hmm. And it was just a wonderful example of somebody working at, in the realm of a major motion picture with all of the hundreds of people that involved.
Sorry about that, John.
Oh, that's okay. I just that story was getting kind of long, but I was saying that with all of that pressure, he still had the focus and the confidence to take all the time he needed to make the room look exactly the way he wanted it to look. You know, and it's just it's a wonderful example, and he's such a charming and odd and brilliant person to be around that you just feel like you just want to be around and watch him work. You want to, and everybody I talked to on that show, you know, most of the people on the crew are people who had done 2, 3, 4 films with him and been on the series, and then, you know, he has a group that is just so devoted to him,
right?
And that, you know, is proud of their long relationship, and they'll do anything for him. I mean, he really engenders that kind of affection and respect and devotion, and he's quite an interesting fella, and I'm really glad I got to know. Anyway, we shot the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And a few months later, my phone rings and I pick it up. Oh, John, yeah, hey, David Lynch. Oh, David, hi. John, I hate to say this, but you know, we had to cut that scene. And he did such good work in it. He just came through for me 100%. I just wanted you to know it has nothing to do with anything else other than we just think the story needs to move on, and we didn't really need that scene. So, I understand, David. It's so really good of you to call. All right, so look, come on over. You know, we're doing the. I just didn't want you to be surprised. I hope you'll be at the screening, and there's going to be a lot of expensive food afterwards. So eat your fill. And he said, "Oh, give me your home address." And I gave him my home address, and he sent me a jacket. He sent me a Lost Highways jacket.
That's cool.
Anyway, that I can tell you after 40 years in Hollywood, mm-hmm. That is a rare thing for a director to call an actor over a cut scene.
Yeah, very rare.
It just doesn't happen, and it says a lot about him as an artist and as a human being.
It does. They call him the Jimmy Stewart of Mars.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you know, he's the guy who actually uses "holy cow" and "gee" in his vocabulary.
It's old school, yeah. You did the underrated Mind Ripper. You got a good story about that?
Well, Mind Ripper was a lot of fun, for 2 reasons. One is I went into audition for that in High Rise in West LA, mm-hmm. And who's waiting in the room but my friend John Deal. And John and I knew each other, you know, in LA theater, and we'd done a bunch of readings together. We had a group. We were in the same kind of circle of friends, and we had a lot that had drawn us together over the years. And we thought, wouldn't this be great to get to go to Bulgaria together? And we did. We both got the job. And I don't know. John was next to Lance Henriksen. I think John was the biggest name on the movie at the time. Although Vani Ribisi was in the film too. Although it was kind of before he got to the peak of his fame. But I also knew Vani from My Two Dads.
Yeah.
We'd actually become friends on that show, working on that for a week, and he was like 12 or 13. So he and his sister and mom, you know, were like, mm-hmm. For some reason, we just became pals, and we went to lunch together, and, you know, we hung out together. But anyway, I think maybe John put in a good word for me. That's always, he would never admit it, but I think he convinced him to hire me. Who knows? Maybe it was just my brilliant performance.
Yeah.
But we went to Sofia, Bulgaria to shoot it, and I was in Sofia for 3 weeks, and we just had a fascinating time. I guess the the automatic door and have my brain stuffed out.
Yeah.
We did this scene a number of times, where I start to walk through the door and then I'm pulled backwards and the door slams on me and bangs me a couple times as they're struggling to hold on to me, and then I get pulled back and the door slams shut.
Right.
So we did this. We had to shoot. We had to shoot it maybe 6 or 8 times or something. We get everything's happy. Cut for the day. I go back to the hotel room, and I see that I have developed a black and blue area that stretches from my neck to my upper thigh, and the whole front of my body is just this, ghastly purple.
Yeah.
And so that night we were going to all meet at a restaurant for dinner. One of the producers is buying dinner, so everybody's going to show up. Mm-hmm. So I go to the restaurant. I'm a little later because I just, it took me longer to dress. I'm tender. And they said, well, hey, there's John here. You did well today. He's like, how did they go for you? And I said, like this. And I pulled my shirt up. And everybody went, oh! And then I got this huge round of applause. Which goes to show, if you do something that nearly kills you,
yeah,
they love it. The rest of the company will love it.
Yeah.
It actually happened also on when I did one of the LAPD Blues, the first one I did. It opens with I think cold opening, and I'm out. My character's out in the street waiting for the cops to come. And as the cops come, I step out in front of the cop car, put my hands out in front of me to stop them. Mm-hmm. And Jimmy Smith, who's driving, jams on the brakes, and he stops a couple of feet from me. And so the stunt supervisor said, okay, John, see here, this is where I want your left foot. You plant your left foot right there, put your hands out. Now, if for some reason Jimmy's a little slow and the car comes further than it's expected to, just raise your left leg behind you. Just stick your left leg out behind you, and the car will go under you. Okay?
Okay.
I said, all right, fine. So we do it once, works fine, I don't have to do anything. Second time, he stops in time. Third time, great. Fourth time, he hits the brakes, the car keeps coming. The brakes are overheated, and they're not doing their job efficiently. So the car comes right at me. I raise my right leg, and the car slips under me, and I smack against the windshield, and looking like I'm 6 inches from Dennis Franz's very surprised face. and so the hubbub, and then they realize I'm okay, everything's okay, nobody's hurt. Jimmy gets out, and he says, this guy survived! But they followed instructions, and everybody goes, yay! So anytime you nearly kill yourself, or get killed, actually I've run into Jimmy a couple times after that, and he said, hey, this is the guy I almost killed.
Oh, wow. So when quarantine isn't happening, are you still acting?
Sure. I mean, actually, acting, in a way, I'm acting during quarantine as well. We're doing some Zoom things. A lot of the small theater companies, I think, are in the same rut. Actually, some of the large theater companies, too, with no ability to do shows or bring in ticket revenue. Right. And also, a lot of the other revenue you might get is attached to your attendance and your producing capabilities. If you can't produce, your income pretty much dwindles to nothing. So fortunately, there are a few programs. There's the Small Business Administration program. There's some local LA programs. We've gotten grants, emergency grants from a couple of our corporate and foundation funders. So it looks like right now we are probably okay at least through the end of the year we don't have to worry about losing our theater, even though we can't produce. But we're trying to find things that we can do on Zoom just to get our brand out there so people don't forget about us. Mm-hmm. So working with a bunch of our actors on a Zoom presentation of a Carlo Goldoni play from the 18th century called Il Campiello. We've done some Shakespeare study stuff in-house over Zoom. You know, like just taking the Winter's Tale and working with Dakin Matthews on that for 2 hours a day, 2 days a week for about 6 weeks. That was a lovely experience, actually. Got a lot out of that. Our playwrights group's kind of on hiatus right now, but we were meeting every Tuesday and reading new pages by our playwrights.
Mm-hmm.
And I get asked to do, I've done a couple other play readings online. So there's a bit of that going on. We're just starting to get audition notices of things that are trying to start. But so far, because my wife and I are both in high-risk groups, we've been self-isolating since March with very little, go pick up groceries in the parking lot at Ralph's, or go for walks through the neighborhood or somewhere else. But that's about it. So the idea of going back on a set, I don't really feel comfortable being among the first people to do that.
Yeah.
Because even the audition materials really didn't address, what the protocols were going to be.
Yeah.
So that already kind of set me off. It seems to me anybody who's going to be doing among the first attempts at returning to a soundstage really need to have a good solid plan that they're very upfront about. So it'll probably be a while longer before I'm comfortable with moving into that era, but I don't know that anybody else is either. They're talking about it, but I haven't heard of any actual shooting going on yet.
Yeah, it's crazy. I hope everything's going to come to a head soon, because I'm cabin fevered out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there is some encouraging news on the vaccine front.
Mm-hmm.
There's some hopeful signs that they may have had some success in creating antibodies. So we'll see where that goes. But we're all, I think most of us, at least in Antilles, we're pretty sure we won't be back in a theater until probably next spring. Is more likely.
Yeah.
Because the theaters are traditionally the last place to open, because you're in an enclosed space with a bunch of people. I really don't know what we're going to, once you do one play with a concept of, okay, we're doing the Miser during the era of coronavirus. So all the actors are wearing face masks.
Right.
You can do that for one or two plays, but after that, it's going to get kind of old.
Yeah.
And then I know as an audience member, I'm not going to feel comfortable going into a 99-seat theater, a little theater with substandard circulation, and sitting in there for 2 or 3 hours with a bunch of strangers. It doesn't sound appealing to me at the moment. So I don't think that until we have a vaccine and it's proven effective, and things have settled down and we've begun to move back. I think it's probably going to be a good 6 months to a year after people feel comfortable not wearing masks in public before they're going to feel comfortable going to the theater.
Yeah. Do you think if every venue made it absolutely mandatory to wear a mask, everything would be okay?
Well, I don't think there are any circumstances under which everything will be okay. There'll always be some people putting up a stink about being told what to do.
Yeah.
That's just human nature. It's that way. It was that way in the Middle Ages and in the Renaissance during plague periods. There are always a certain number of people who just say, "Well, what the fuck? It's not going to happen to me," or if it does, say la vie. But I do think that it should be mandatory and it should be enforced. I think we'd be in a much better place right now if rather than city governments letting their medical officers have to resign to avoid death threats, that they had pushed back, found out who was making death threats, or put people under guard, or did whatever was necessary, rather than buckling to that kind of those kinds of threats.
Yeah.
It emboldens people that think they can get away with that anyway. It's gotten so bad that even the creature in the White House feels he needs to put on a mask now, and is encouraging people to wear masks.
Yeah.
So that means he's got to be scared.
Yeah.
and this is a person that seems only to be scared of something that is going to impact him personally. Maybe impacts his immediate family personally, although probably not much. It's probably not much more of concern to him than the average person that is not in his immediate family. But I think we should be not only encouraging but necessitating the wearing of masks, and they are doing it. Like in LA City, it's now mandatory to wear masks.
Right.
When you're out in public. And I have to say, probably 80% of the people we see have masks. And of the ones that don't have masks, either they're not wearing them properly, they're wearing them below their nose, or they're wearing them half off of one ear or something.
Yeah.
So they're ready to put it on completely if they have to walk up to you, but they're still asserting their individuality. Or maybe they're just finding it, some people find it very uncomfortable to breathe through a mask. And I understand that it's unpleasant and you'd rather not have to do it, but I think the reasons for doing it are so obvious and overwhelming that I'm willing to undergo a little discomfort when I'm out in public.
Yeah.
Just to be a good team player and to do my part to slow down and eventually stop the spread of the virus. And if people did that with masks, if it became, because a lot of people aren't wearing masks. They talk about, I'm not going to live my life in fear, which is basically them saying, I'm terrified. And my way of dealing with it is to pretend there's nothing wrong. That's how I dealt with my marriage. Mm-hmm. That's how I dealt with my children.
Yeah.
That's how I deal with my boss. If something's terribly off, I just pretend nothing's wrong and keep on going. So those are people, and then those are people that are like living off of, they're like, all their bros won't wear a mask, so they don't want to appear like a pussy in front of their bros, so they won't wear a mask. So, once you have to pay a fine or two, and once you find that almost everyone in the society considers you a dope, or a jerk for not wearing your mask, there will be a small amount of people that will be proud of that and will continue not to wear the mask. So we just have to try to avoid those people as much as possible, and and keep finding them because they might be a good source of income for the civic coffers. But I'm hoping that we're moving into an era where more people will be more careful about that, and unfortunately they're having to close down bars and theaters and movie theaters and all that stuff again because people are not practicing masking or social distancing in huge numbers. So hopefully the next time they reopen, people will be a little more circumspect and realize you either play this ugly game and wear the mask, or just accept living in a society that's fractured and that doesn't have the ability to return to normalcy, that is just continuing to transmit the infection over and over again.
Yeah, I got sick back in May, and I had to be tested. It was a test I would never want to get again. Oh my God, the way they stick that thing up your nose.
Oh yeah,
bad.
This is one of the worst diseases in so many ways. I'm also wondering if we're going to find out the vaccine is going to have some horrible side effects that nobody's expected.
Oh, I hope not. I hope not.
Well, yeah. The worst thing I can imagine, I get the vaccine, and then 3 or 4 days later, I start saying, "Hey, you know what? Trump's not doing such a bad job after all."
Yeah.
I don't know why, but now I'm beginning to see what people see in this guy.
I know. Oh my God, it's crazy. It's a shit show, but we'll all get through it. And I want to thank you so much, John, for coming on today.
Well, my pleasure. And what is your podcast? When is it? Are we live? Is it run a later time? When do you do it?
It's pre-recorded. I upload it to YouTube as soon as we're done.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot for asking me. I've enjoyed a little trip down memory lane.
Yes, my pleasure. And I hope after all this craziness is over, you get back to work and have a great time doing it.
Thank you, Tommy. From your lips to whoever's ears are attached to whatever brain can make that happen.
My pleasure, John. Have a great day.
All right. Bye, Tommy.
Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. John Apicella. Ain't he a cool dude? Nice guy. Great journeyman. Great stories. Remembered a lot. More than he thought he did. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Add me as a friend on Facebook. Join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes. Out on the street, just one of the guys.